Most language teaching methods focus on grammar, vocabulary, and communication. Suggestopedia took a very different approach. Its creator believed that music, atmosphere, and psychological suggestion could dramatically accelerate learning. In this episode, we're going to talk about Suggestopedia. Throughout the series, we have examined various methods that have shaped language teaching practice. Today, we turn to one of the most unconventional and, for many, controversial approaches that emerged in the 1970s and 1980s. Suggestopedia was developed by Georgi Lozanov, a Bulgarian psychiatrist and educator who sought to harness what he called non-rational and non-conscious influences to optimize language learning. Unlike methods grounded primarily in linguistic or applied linguistic theory, Suggestopedia drew heavily on psychology, the therapeutic use of music, and ideas loosely connected to yoga and strands of Soviet psychology. The method is perhaps best known for its distinctive classroom environment: brightly decorated rooms, comfortable reclining chairs arranged in circles, carefully selected Baroque music, and an authoritative yet supportive teacher. These elements were not simply aesthetic choices in Suggestopedia, they were treated as central to the learning process. In this session, we will explore what makes Suggestopedia distinctive. We will examine the theoretical claims that underpin this method and consider both the enthusiasm and, of course, the criticism the method has generated. Suggestopedia emerged from what Lozanov called suggestology. He described this as a science concerned with the systematic study of non-rational and non-conscious influences that human beings constantly respond to. Lozanov's work began in a clinical context. As a psychiatrist working in Bulgaria, he developed therapeutic techniques designed to help traumatized patients recover through what he described as the opposite to hypnosis. Central to Lozanov's theory is the concept of suggestion. However, he distinguishes suggestion in Pedia from hypnosis, which he as harmful and draining. Instead, the goal was to create what he called constant pseudo-passiveness. This refers to a relaxed but attentive state that was believed to support concentration and reduce anxiety. Lozanov proposed several mechanisms through which suggestion operates. The literature often refers to 6 of these components, but 3 are particularly important for understanding classroom practice, and these are authority, infantilisation, and double-planedness. Now, authority plays a key role. Lozanov argued that learners are more receptive to information presented by authoritative sources. Suggestopedia therefore deliberately constructs an aura of authority for confident teacher behavior, scientific-sounding terminology, and strong claims about effectiveness. Infantilization refers to the establishment of a parent-child relationship between a teacher and a student. Learners are encouraged to take part in role play, games, songs, and physical activities intended to restore the spontaneity and openness often associated with childhood. Double-planedness refers to the idea that learning occurs on more than one level at the same time. The students learn not only from the language that is explicitly taught, but also from the entire environment. The music, the decoration of the room, the teacher's tone of voice, and the general atmosphere all function as part of the teaching process. The use of intonation and rhythm also plays an important role. Teachers present materials with varied voice modulation in order to dramatize the content and avoid monotony. Most distinctively, Suggestopedia makes extensive use of music. Lozanov specified that slow Baroque movements at around 60 beats per minute in 4/4 time were ideal. So it was that specific. He suggested that this rhythm synchronized with bodily processes such as the heartbeat, and that a slower heartbeat could enhance mental efficiency. Spoken input was aligned with this musical rhythm and delivered during particular instructional cycles. Now let's look at core principles and course design for Suggestopedia. Now, Suggestopedia aims to develop advanced conversational proficiency rapidly, with particular attention to pronunciation and prosodic features of language. At the same time, Lozanov stated that the main aim of teaching is not memorization, but the understanding and creative solution of problems. So despite this claim, vocabulary memorization remained a prominent feature of Suggestopedia practice, often supported through paired translations. The syllabus is organized around dialogue and extended text rather than grammatical structures. A typical course lasts around 30 days and consists of 10 instructional units. Classes meet for approximately 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. Each unit centers on a dialogue of roughly 1,200 words, accompanied by vocabulary lists and brief grammatical commentary. The study of each unit follows a 3-day cycle. On the first day, the teacher introduces the dialogue and explains its general meaning. Students receive printed text with parallel translations, and questions are addressed. The dialogue is then read in specialized ways designed to support retention. On the second and third days, the students move into elaboration activities. During primary elaboration, learners work directly with the dialogue through imitation, questioning, and reading. During secondary elaboration, they recombine elements of the material creatively through role play and communicative activities. Textbooks are expected to have emotional force and literary quality with engaging characters and narrative interest. Lozanov also advised that traumatic themes and distasteful lexical material should be avoided, reflecting his belief that anxiety interferes with learning. Grammar receives limited explicit attention. When grammatical points arise, they are briefly mentioned during reading activities and deliberately left somewhat incomplete, with the assumption that the mind will continue processing patterns unconsciously. Now we're going to look at classroom implementation of Suggestopedia. A typical Suggestopedia lesson cycle includes 3 main phases: presentation, concert sessions, and elaboration. During the presentation phase, the teacher introduces a dialogue informally and dramatically, focusing on meaning and accessibility rather than detailed analysis. The concert sessions form the most distinctive element of the method. In the active concert, students follow the text while the teacher reads aloud, adjusting their voice rhythmically in coordination with Baroque music. Between the active and passive concerts, there is a short period of silence. In the passive concert, students close their books, recline in their chairs, and simply listen while the teacher reads the text again over the musical background. At the end of the session, students leave quietly. They're asked to read the material briefly before sleeping and again after waking, but no other homework is assigned. The elaboration phase includes activities such as role play, games, reading practice, and question and answer work. These activities may look familiar from other communicative approaches, but here they are organized specifically to maintain a relaxed and receptive atmosphere. The physical environment is considered essential. So classrooms are highly decorated and cheerful. Students sit in comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. Groups are ideally socially homogeneous and typically consist of around 12 learners. Students are also given new names and personal theories in the target culture. This allows them to detach from previous learning experiences and adopt a new identity within the classroom setting. The teacher's role is demanding. Teachers are expected to demonstrate complete confidence in the method, maintain carefully structured routines, and sustain the appropriate atmosphere during the concert sessions. They are also expected to possess skills in acting, singing, and elements of psychotherapy. So, with this in mind, we're going to look at critical perspectives to Suggestopedia and its contemporary relevance. Obviously, Suggestopedia, as you can imagine, attracted both enthusiastic support and strong criticism. Theoretically, Scholars criticize Lozanov's use of technical terminology, experimental claims, and scholarly references, which kind of suggests that much of the framework appeared pseudoscientific. In fact, Lozanov himself acknowledged that the scientific appearance of the method functioned partly as what he called a ritual placebo system. From a practical perspective, Suggestopedia also presents significant challenges. It obviously requires a specialized classroom environment, extensive teacher preparation beyond really conventional language pedagogy, and carefully designed teaching materials. And there are also relatively few empirical studies meeting contemporary research standards. As a result, the effectiveness of the method remains difficult to evaluate, and much of the evidence supporting it is anecdotal, really. Despite these limitations, some of its ideas have had lasting influence. For example, the emphasis on reducing anxiety when attending to the emotional environment of learning contributed to later humanistic approaches such as community language learning, and resonates with the emphasis on lowering anxiety in the natural approach. So Suggestopedia represents a distinctive chapter in the history of language teaching. It places a strong emphasis on effective factors, classroom atmosphere, and psychological influences rather than traditional concerns with grammatical explanations. Whether one accepts Lozanov's theoretical claims or approaches them with skepticism, the method raises important questions about the emotional and environmental conditions under which language learning takes place. So in this sense, Suggestopedia reminds us that language learning is never purely cognitive. Expectations, atmosphere, and emotion all shape what learners believe they are capable of achieving. Thank you for listening.